Imagine this for a second. There's a hidden force shaping your thoughts, not just the choices you make in the moment, but your desires, your impulses, even the way you see other people. And here's the strange part, you don't even realize it's happening. Now, think about how much of your behavior is actually driven not by logic or conscious decision, but by something deeper, something primal, something ancient that's buried way down in your mind. What if I told you that this hidden force has everything to do with sex, but not the physical act itself, rather the psychological energy behind it? That's where the real story begins. Because today, we're going to explore a truth that most people resist, but none of us can escape: the undeniable influence of sexuality on the human psyche, and what Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychologist, discovered about what we're really suppressing. Stick with me, because the insight at the end of this journey is the most transformative of all. It's the one that doesn't just show why this force controls us, but also how we can reclaim that energy to actually change the way we live. So let's start at the beginning. Sex. It's a simple word, but it carries a ton of weight. Desire, shame, confusion, power. Why does this single word carry so much emotional charge? The first question we need to ask is this: is sex just a physical need, or is it the doorway to something deeper? Jung believed it was much more than biology. He saw sexuality as a symbolic expression of psychic energy, what he called the libido. Now, libido isn't just about sexual drive. In Jung's framework, it's the raw life force that fuels everything: creativity, emotion, even the will to act. This was a big shift from Freud, Jung's predecessor. Freud believed neuroses came primarily from sexual repression, but Jung argued the picture was bigger. He said that when sexual energy is misunderstood, denied, or misdirected, it becomes a shadow force, a kind of hidden current that distorts our behavior, our relationships, and even our self-understanding. Think about how society treats sexuality. It's censored, commodified, exploited, and repressed. But here's the key: when something so fundamental gets shoved aside, it doesn't just disappear, it goes underground. And from that hidden place, it begins to manipulate us in ways we don't see. Jung called this hidden dimension the shadow, the part of ourselves we reject, suppress, or simply refuse to look at. And within that shadow lives our unknown sexuality. This doesn't just mean fantasies or desires, it also includes the vulnerabilities, the fears, the pieces of our sexual identity we've been taught to feel ashamed of. They don't vanish just because we ignore them. They live on in us, but from the dark. And from there, they control us. So ask yourself, how much of your behavior, your insecurities, your emotional reactions, maybe even your judgments of other people, how much of that is influenced by desires or fears you haven't allowed yourself to explore? Jung's insight was sharp. Repression of sexuality doesn't purify the soul, it fragments it. And this fragmentation creates what modern psychology would call a kind of inner disconnection, a split between your conscious persona and the unconscious forces driving you.
Let's go deeper into that idea. The persona, that's the social mask you show to the world. It's the curated version of yourself, the part you keep under control so others accept you. But underneath that mask, in your subconscious, are the aspects you don't want people to see. Sexual shame often ends up dominating that layer. And here's where the danger lies. What you don't own consciously gets projected outward. You see it in others, you judge it in them, you get triggered by it. But really, it's a mirror reflecting the denied parts of yourself. That's why Jung believed personal growth requires individuation, the process of integrating both the conscious and unconscious aspects of the self. And yes, that includes sexual energy. What you suppress ends up controlling you. But what you face, what you integrate, that empowers you. And this matters because so many people are searching for something: spiritual growth, emotional healing, creative inspiration, Without realizing, they're cut off from the very energy that fuels all of those things. The libido. The creative, sexual energy that doesn't just want to be released, it wants to be expressed. When this energy is ignored, it twists itself into obsession, shame, fear, or even addiction. But when it's embraced, it becomes vitality, confidence, depth.
So how do we start to notice what we've been suppressing? It begins with awareness. Start by paying attention to your reactions. What makes you uncomfortable in others? What triggers anger or curiosity that feels too strong? Those are signs. Signs that your unconscious is trying to speak. Dreams are another pathway. Jung often analyzed dreams for this very reason. They reveal the symbols of our inner world unfiltered by the defenses we put up while awake. And sex in dreams? It rarely means just sex. Often, it's a symbol of union, not with someone else, but between different parts of yourself. So the question becomes, what part of you are you avoiding bringing into union? Jung believed that deep within every man is the anima, the inner feminine, and within every woman, the animus, the inner masculine. These archetypes aren't just abstract ideas, they shape how we experience love, intimacy, and connection. But here's the catch. When these inner counterparts are undeveloped or repressed, they cause dysfunction in relationships. And when they're consciously developed, they guide us toward deeper wholeness. That growth requires confronting sexual and emotional shadows, not running from them. So think about it. How much of your life is silently shaped by feelings you've never allowed yourself to face? Jung pointed out that sexual repression isn't just about moral codes or cultural rules. It's about fragmentation of the psyche. It's about losing access to part of your life force. Now, society today tends to swing between two extremes, overexposure and over-restriction. On one side, we live in a hyper-sexualized culture where sex is plastered on screens, in ads, everywhere. On the other side, honest conversations about intimacy, vulnerability, or shame are rare. True integration isn't about indulging or denying. It's about awareness. It's about seeing sexual energy for what it is. Not a sin, not a threat, but a signal from the soul. So let's push this further. How does this energy show up in our relationships? Jung believed that relationships act as mirrors. They reflect what's unresolved within us. We're not just drawn to people because we like them. We're drawn to people who activate unconscious material we haven't yet integrated. Think about the times you've been pulled towards someone who both excites you and frustrates you. Maybe they even hurt you, but you couldn't walk away. That's not coincidence, that's projection. Projection is when we place our unrecognized desires, fears, or wounds onto another person. And nowhere is projection stronger than in romantic and sexual relationships. If you haven't confronted your own shadow, you'll end up falling in love with what feels missing inside you. The partner becomes a symbol of your hidden self. That's why passion often feels so overwhelming. It's not just about them, it's about you, trying to reunite with what you've lost inside yourself. The problem comes when the illusion breaks, the projection fades. Suddenly, you feel disappointed or even betrayed. But what really happened? It wasn't that the other person changed, it's that your projection dissolved. And now you're faced with the raw truth. Two people, each carrying their own shadows, each hoping the other would heal what they themselves avoided. This is why repression of sexual energy isn't just a personal issue, it's a relational wound. When you're disconnected from your own desire, from your own emotional body, you can't truly meet another person. You can only perform connection, but not actually feel it. True intimacy, emotional, psychological, and physical, requires vulnerability. And vulnerability is impossible when shame is running the show. So here's the hard question. In your relationships, are you showing up as your full self or just performing the version you think is acceptable? Do you let people see the real you or just the parts you've learned to control? Jung insisted that wholeness doesn't come from perfection. It comes from integration. That means embracing even the pieces that feel unlovable, the need, the hunger, the pain. This is the path of individuation, becoming a unified self instead of a fragmented performance. Think about modern dating for a second. So much of it is built on image management. Carefully curated profiles, highlight reels, perfect selfies. But beneath all that is a fear. If they saw the real me, they'd leave. And maybe they would. But the greater tragedy is that we abandon ourselves in the process. We leave ourselves behind long before anyone else does. That abandonment starts with disconnection from sexual truth. Many people see sex as performance, validation, or control. But sexuality, when fully awakened, is none of those things. It's about presence, vulnerability, surrender. Not surrendering to someone else, but to the moment, to the self, to the intelligence of the body. And the body doesn't lie. When you feel safe, it softens. When you're afraid, it tightens. When you're disconnected, it numbs out. Every sensation is a form of information. It's your unconscious speaking through your physical experience. Ignore it, and you stay in confusion. Listen, and you start to wake up.
This is why Jung argued that the psyche always longs for balance. The unconscious is constantly seeking conscious realization. And when sexuality is pushed into the dark, it doesn't just vanish, it bursts out sideways through jealousy, manipulation, infidelity, self-sabotage, and even loneliness. And loneliness is a big one. Many people today feel isolated, not because they lack relationships, but because they lack intimacy. They haven't let themselves be fully known, even to themselves. So think of the last time you felt truly seen, not just admired, not desired, but understood, cherished for your essence, not your mask. That kind of connection only happens when you stop hiding from your shadow. When embraced consciously, sexual energy becomes a bridge from isolation to union, from shame to sacredness. And this isn't about indulgence, it's about healing. It's about reclaiming the part of you that was never meant to be silenced, the part that is alive, creative, and passionate. In ancient traditions, this energy was seen as sacred. In Tantra, for example, sexual energy was honored as a doorway to higher states of consciousness, not because of the act itself, but because of what it required: presence, intensity, and surrender. Jung found echoes of this in alchemy, where the goal was transformation, the merging of opposites into something new. In psychology, that process is about turning the unconscious into consciousness, transforming shadow into power. And it all starts with facing what you've been afraid to feel. Now we arrive at the heart of the journey, the most important truth of all. This is the insight that ties everything together. And if you really let it sink in, it can change how you see not just sexuality, but your entire life. Throughout this exploration, we've seen how suppressed sexual energy doesn't just vanish, it turns into shadow. It distorts your perceptions, drives your behavior from the unconscious, and shapes your relationships in ways that often leave you feeling powerless. But here's the revelation: the energy you've been taught to fear is the very same energy that creates life itself. And I don't mean that metaphorically, I mean literally. Sexual energy is the life force. It's the same psychic fuel that powers creativity, spirituality, vitality, and purpose. When you repress it, you don't just shut down desire, you shut down the fire of your own becoming. This is the tragedy of modern life. We're taught to be productive, but not passionate, efficient, but not embodied, social, but not soulful. And because of this, many people end up half alive. Functional, yes, but fractured inside.
But here's the good news. The energy you've suppressed is the same energy that can awaken you. When you reclaim it, not in lust, not in rebellion, but in reverence, you reconnect with your true self. You start to feel again. You start to imagine, to create, to love fully. Because in the end, this energy isn't about sex alone. It's about union, and union is the secret of everything. Union between body and soul, between masculine and feminine, between shadow and light, between you and what Jung called the self, the deeper, whole version of you that's always been there, waiting to be realized. Jung saw sexuality as symbolic of something much greater, the longing of the soul to reunite with its source. In his work, The Psychology of the Transference, he wrote about the conjunctio, the alchemical marriage, the symbolic joining of opposites within the self. This wasn't just abstract theory, it was a roadmap for human evolution. Because when you bring together the fragmented parts of your psyche, the rejected, the shamed, the hidden, you radiate wholeness. And from that wholeness, everything changes. You stop chasing relationships that mirror your wounds. You stop performing identities that aren't real. You stop fearing your own desires. Instead, you channel that energy toward creation, connection, and depth.
So imagine what life would feel like if you weren't in conflict with yourself. If you weren't battling your own body, your own emotions, your own hunger for life. Imagine being aligned, where longing isn't a weakness to fix, but a compass to follow. Because desire, at its core, isn't dangerous, it's guidance. The desire to touch, to connect, to express, these aren't problems, they're portals. Every great artist, mystic, and visionary has known this. The same energy that stirs beneath the surface is the energy that gives birth to vision. And here's a truth worth holding on to. You cannot separate your soul from your sensuality. You cannot rise spiritually while shaming your instincts. You cannot build a life of depth while hiding from your own power. That's the final lesson. The thing you were told to suppress is the very key to your liberation. Not just sexually, but emotionally, creatively, spiritually. The person who integrates their sexual energy doesn't become enslaved to desire, they become its master. And in that mastery, they gain access to something rare, the full range of their being.
So ask yourself honestly, what have you been afraid to feel? What part of your power have you left behind because someone once told you it was dangerous? What would it mean to reclaim that power, not with ego, but with love? Because the real power is not in the act. It's in the awareness, the ability to choose consciously, to feel fully, to connect deeply, to live truthfully. That's what Jung was pointing toward all along, the path of individuation, becoming whole. And to walk that path, you have to go into the places you were told to avoid. You have to face your shadow. You have to make peace with desire. You have to bring sexual energy out of the dark and into the light, not to flaunt it, but to honor it.
Because once you honor it, everything changes. You become less reactive, more grounded, more compassionate, more powerful. You begin to love not out of need, but out of fullness. You create not out of lack, but out of overflow. You live not from suppression, but from soul. The truth is, most people won't do this work. They'll stay in the loop, repress, project, repeat. But if you're still here, listening, it means something in you is ready.
Ready to remember what the world tried to make you forget, that your energy is sacred, that your truth is not shameful, that your wholeness is your destiny. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not dangerous. You are powerful. And when that power is reclaimed, it becomes love in motion. So let this echo beyond your mind. Let it sink into your body. Let it call back the parts of you that you buried, the creative one, the passionate one, the wild one, the sacred one. They're not gone. They're just waiting. And when you welcome them home, your life doesn't change because you add something new. It changes because you stop hiding who you already are. The suppressed becomes sacred. The wounded becomes wise. The shadow becomes light. And that, right there, is the path Jung showed us. Now, it's yours to walk.